I'm not there to sit there and walk them through every single step or whatever thing.
Yeah. You're there to love on them.
And they're 11, and maybe just to listen to them, to hear their story, let them cry in the office, to hold their hand, let them get out the hurts, and just let them know that they're being heard.
Welcome back to the Dr. Crockett Show. I'm your host, Dr. Susan Crockett. And, most days we say that we are going where the scalpel doesn't reach, right? That's the tagline for the show. It's kind of funny because I'm a surgeon. But today, I'm joined by a fellow surgeon. This is so much fun. We still aren't going to do a bunch of gory surgical talk.
Yeah, not a whole lot of shop talk today.
Yeah, but this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Brandon Harrell, former chief of surgery at Northeast Methodist Hospital. We work together. He is a general surgeon. And we're going to talk today about faith-filled medicine.
Yes, ma'am. Looking forward to the talk. Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here. And,
thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's great. Just a little bit about myself for your viewers. So again, my name is Brandon Harrell, and I grew up here in San Antonio. For most of my, local guy. But after graduating high school here, I went over to Abilene Christian University, did my 4 years there, and then from there.
And then the same place I went for med school.
Same place, Texas A&M.
Which I didn't know until today that we both went
I can't believe we didn't connect those dots, but it's a big school.
It is. And we were a couple years apart. I'm not going to tell them how far.
I don't even know those details.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I finished A&M med school in 2004, and then went on to do general surgery and trained at Baylor Scott & White in Temple, Texas. So did 5 years there and finished there in 2009. So been out now in private practice for about 14 years and just cruising along. So
my patients love seeing you. We do a lot of cross referrals, and sometimes we get to do surgeries together when we have dual cases.
Yes, it's always a privilege to work with you. Thank you very much. So
I was wondering if we could start by telling our viewers about how you ended up in medicine. Like what influenced your decision to do that? Because this is not an easy thing to do.
No, you're right. And it was something that really, it started actually not with medicine itself. It came from, honestly, my parents. My mom and dad were both had a heart for underprivileged folks, people down in their luck, or people in difficult circumstances. And so even at a very young age, we would go down to SAM shelters and...
which are the charity shelters in San Antonio.
Yes, ma'am. And battered women's shelters, and saw some really hard things.
Even as a kid you were doing
As
this?
A kid, yes.
Wow.
And so it opened my eyes that, hey, the world isn't always what you see at your house and the community that you're around. And so there's a lot of hurting people out there and a lot of need. Either my parents are physicians, but it just kind of got the gears turning that I wanted my life to be about helping people in whatever capacity that could be. And I didn't really know yet at the time what that might look like, but it didn't really kind of start clicking until I had that biology class in high school, and then started to get into the human body stuff and just totally fell in love with the human body. And it's kind of like a light bulb went off, and I was like, I could take this awesome thing of the human body and science, which I love, with hurting people, and I can infuse these things.
Put them together,
and I can add in also my strong beliefs in faith and in Christ, and I can add that into my practice, and I could just see kind of this whole thing taking shape in my mind. I remember sitting there as a sophomore in high school, I was like, I wonder if I could do that, if I could pull that off.
Isn't that interesting that when we look back at our younger selves and the conversations we had with ourselves and how things like this evolved? Because my calling to medicine, and I do believe it's a calling, was kind of similar, and I'm not going to share my whole story today, but since the topic of today's interview is about faith and medicine and how we infuse those into our practice or blend them, and how that is part of healing and what we do, I think it's important. I think it's important, especially today, that we acknowledge that for a lot of us, it still is a calling. It's something that we feel as a spiritual thing that we're meant to do, a purpose.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That was always the intent for me. I was raised in a non-denominational church here in San Antonio, and so it's always been an important part of my life. And so I knew that once I got into medicine, I wanted to figure out how to integrate that into my practice and whatever it looked like. And I still remember when an orthopedic surgeon came for a career day, and he talked about how long it was going to take to do medicine. And then he said, yeah, but you only do one day at a time. and that's a great philosophy to live by.
It really is.
That, man, we get overwhelmed in life. Just do today.
Just one day at a time.
Just one day, baby. Just one day at a time.
That's a soundbite right there.
It's it. So you could do anything one day at a time. So getting into medicine and becoming a surgeon, it just that felt like a natural thing for me to go into, just for my own proclivities and the gifts God had given me. And so getting into surgery has been just a ripe field, or a field that's ripe for harvest of people that need help.
Yeah.
And not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually.
They're suffering. And I think that's one of the great challenges. You know, you and I were talking before the show about how as physicians, it's so unique where you're in a clinic and you're opening the door and you never know who's going to be on the other side, right? We get faced with people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, all kinds of religious backgrounds. And one of the things that has shaped me as a surgeon has been learning to just love whoever is behind the door, like figure out where they are and where to meet that need. And a lot of times, without even like speaking what I'm doing, I'm spiritually ministering to people at the same time. Right. No, absolutely. I hear what you're saying. One of my favorite quotes is from St. Francis of Assisi, and he said, if I don't mess it up, preach the gospel of Christ at all times, and if necessary, use words. There you go.
And it's a great thing that I try to live by, in the sense that I don't feel like I have to walk around with a Bible and hit people over the head with it. I don't have to, you don't have to spiritually abuse people or try to manipulate people.
In fact, in the world today, like all of us, I think have come across some form of those behaviors that are just they're so hard, and they're so going against what we're trying to do, and we're loving people or sharing, of course, the Spirit with people.
Well, I think it would be disingenuous to not even mention the fact that there isn't probably a person watching this today that doesn't know or hasn't been affected by some abuse in the form of religion. And we're all aware of the different scandals that have just racked our country and worldwide in the name of religion. And that's been going on since the beginning of time. Look at history. This is not new.
Right.
And so, why are we still even talking about this?
Why are we even... I think this is very brave, honestly. But I'm going to pat ourselves on the back. I think I'm being brave right now. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway, right? Having courage.
Be bold. We got to be bold.
That's right. Not bold in proselytizing. That's not the point of this. Being bold in having the difficult conversation about, given the nature of all the denominations fighting amongst each other and all of the just burnout with religion. In fact, I heard the word post-Christian the other day, like we're moving into a post-Christian nation. And I thought, that's interesting, like just really curious about what that means in light of where we are in our country with religion and all of the negatives associated with it. Why are we, as physicians that are taking care of people and ministering to them in a physical way, why are we even having this conversation still? Why is this still a thing? Why haven't we just abandoned it?
Yeah, and certainly some people have, and I understand, because they've been disappointed, they've been let down, and they've been hurt by people in church and religion. And so a lot of people have just tried to find a way to fill that hole in their life with whatever they can. And namely, the most of the post-Christian or modern thought is to fill it with self. Life is about me, and what can I do for myself? And I'm going to live for myself, and I'm going to put myself on the throne of life. And unfortunately, that doesn't work ultimately. And I do believe that ultimately we have to find greater meaning apart from ourselves. And so, I'm an unabashed Christian, and I follow Jesus Christ. But it is not my intent for every patient that comes in that I sit them down and pull out a Bible and try to convert them. That's not my that's not my agenda when someone comes in to see me. I'm happy to engage that with people, but I'm also not there to force myself onto people. And so, as you said earlier, I respect people that come in that don't have a belief in God or follow a different denomination or even a religion altogether. I'm not there to try to convince them or argue with them. That's not my goal. My goal is to be the hands and feet of Christ, to love people. If they want to engage at a different level and a level and they're curious about what I believe, and I'm happy to engage that with them. But it's something where I want to be there to offer hope in life. And if people are interested in what I had to say about it, I'm happy to share that with them. But as I've gotten older and my faith has matured, I felt more freedom. Okay. More freedom.
I love that.
Yeah. And I used to feel that, I every person I meet, I got to tell you about this. And my intentions were good, but it can also be off-putting to some people. And I understand that now. And the reality is that I'm not going to change anybody's heart. I'm not going to change anybody's mind.
Because we're just the conduit. We are the, yeah.
My belief is, of course, that the Holy Spirit changes people. And I'm here just to be the hands and feet of Christ and try to help in whatever way that might be. And it might be for that person at that particular point in time. I'm not there to sit there and walk them through every single step or whatever thing.
Yeah. You're there to love on them.
I'm there to love it, and maybe just to listen to them, to hear their story, to let them cry in the office, to hold their hand, let them get out the hurts, and just let them know that they're being heard. And maybe that's all God has for me on that with that patient visit.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so it's not up to me at that point in time, every person I see, that I've got to
save their soul.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a relief, right?
It's a huge weight just throw off, and God gives us that freedom and says, no, just follow my leading, follow my spirit as I lead you, and I will show you how to engage and interact with patients. So how does that look for me in my practice?
Yeah.
Well, you got to read the room,
Exactly.
You
get really good at it very quickly, right?
Exactly. People come in, and I'll tell you, you probably appreciate this all the time, but people come in, people are loaded, man. I mean, they're angry. They don't want to be there. They don't like doctors. And I get that because they've been abused by doctors in the healthcare, and people are upset at how much it costs and the time it takes to get.
Or they're afraid because they're coming in to talk to us about us doing surgery on them, which is yeah, it's daunting.
It is daunting. And so you have to read the room and just putting people at ease. And that's one thing that I really try to do with all of my patients.
I think you do a really good job of that.
I appreciate that.
I have to say that.
You try to put people at ease. And if you can connect with people at whatever level, and then some people are receptive to saying, Doc, you're really different than other people. Why is that? It gives me an opportunity to say, hey, look, man, I love the Lord. I love Christ, and my heart is for you to know him too. And I just want to love you and bless you.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
And if someone says, man, I'd like to hear more about that, it's like, you want to get a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
That's really cool,
for sure. Yeah. And that's led to some really fun interactions. I met some people and talked to different people at different denominations and churches and met people. It's just been really cool to see what God opens up if you just listen and do what he says.
So I bet you have some good patient stories.
I do. Yeah. I mean, we all know that the human mind is incredibly powerful. And when you talk about faith specifically in medicine, which of course, I'll talk about this one story here. But the human mind is amazing. We don't understand
anywhere near
the brain, right? I mean, in some of these patients that have been so critically ill, and they're holding on life support, and they're waiting for that one daughter to fly in from California, and the patient's intubated and they're sedated and they're not able to speak, of course. And then that daughter comes in, and then an hour later, that patient dies.
Yep.
And
it's all the time.
We don't. The brain is extremely powerful, and we don't understand it.
There's some really interesting studies. I hadn't thought about this in a long time, honestly, till we got to this part in this interview. I didn't prep this, but I remember looking at studies from over a decade ago, looking at the power of prayer, which is, when I think about it from a medical standpoint, I look at the human body and medicine, and I can't help but see a creator.
Right.
There's no other explanation for me personally. And so when I think about, what scientifically, because I'm a scientist too. So
Sure.
as a rational scientist, I have to kind of go, well, God created the rational science part. What does this mean? And the studies were looking at the influence of people praying even from distance on, well, it started with like yeast particles, I think. But there have been some more dramatic ones. And I think probably there's a lot that has to do with energy and intention and where we put our energy out in prayer that has physical implications on the world around us all the time. I think there is some deep scientific wisdom in the traditional texts and all of that I'm just curious to know the reason why. Like, that's what I'm going to ask God
I hear
today. Is like, how does that all work?
Yeah. And, God's okay with hard questions. And He's okay with the scientific mind. And that's a whole nother conversation. But God and science are not opposed to each other.
Not a bit.
They are not opposed to each other.
They are, I don't want to say they're the same thing because I don't make science my God, but I see all of creation, everything as part of what is an intelligent creator. And
intelligent design.
We have this playground,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the closer you look, the more you see greater detail and greater order. You never see greater disorder. It always gets more precise, more focused. You're like, how is this, possible? And it's possible through the Creator, Christ. So, so in regards to your specific question of, patience and faith, I had just an amazing circumstance that happened, and I have his permission to share this, so I'm not violating any HIPAA laws. So I'm not giving my attorneys any cold sweats right now. So, but Eddie is his name. And I'd known Eddie for a couple of years. Actually, I'd operated on him a couple of times. And he, for about 6 months, was coming in complaining of abdominal pain. And 6 months. And so he'd gone through a complete workup, ultrasounds, CAT scans, MRIs, GI had done scopes on upper endoscopy, looking at the stomach, and then lower scopes, of course, looking at colon and intestines. Couldn't find anything. And so eventually he came into the ER with just unbearable pain. And I said, dude, we got to operate. I don't know what's going on.
It's time to look.
But we've got to go look. And he goes, yes, please go look. Well, we go in there and look, and it's kind of one of those worst case scenarios. We
like
get in there,
stuck, and
well, he's got cancer everywhere.
Oh my gosh!
And it was the like a mucinous type cancer, which I know to our viewers may not understand that, but
it's like snot everywhere.
It is. It's the best way you can explain it. It's like a grass fire throughout the abdomen, and so as opposed to where a lot of cancers form like a tumorous or hard mass, this just spreads in a very thin cell layer across the inner lining of the whole abdomen. So it can easily, and was missed on all the CAT scans, MRIs, which is, very disconcerting. So we get in there and we could immediately tell, like, oh no.
Well, at least you figured out what it was, but
we figured it out, and there was a piece of bowel that was just completely occluded off. And so we had to take that section of bowel out, but then we had to put it back together. And as we were trying to put the bowel back together, it wouldn't hold sutures or staples.
They were just pulling through it because it was so inflamed.
So inflamed.
Oh my goodness.
And so eventually, after we had to keep resecting, trying to get the bowel back together, and eventually we did get his intestines back, but I knew it was very tenuous, meaning the bowel was just, it was
fragile.
Very fragile. So I had to wake him up, of course, after surgery, and I said, hey man, I've got really bad news. And Eddie is a believer in Christ. And he said, I had a feeling, Doc. I had a feeling something was wrong. I knew something wasn't right. The pathologist came back and said, there's cancer in all the bowel that we took out.
All
the way through. And so we basically, it is through his entire small intestine. There wasn't anywhere I could safely save. And so I told him that the odds of this healing is pretty much zero, because basically I took cancerous bowel to cancerous bowel and connected it back together. And so the cancer just won't heal like that. And it didn't. And about post-operative day number 3, that bowel came apart. And so he started leaking his entirety of his intestinal contents into his abdomen. And
very serious septic.
Right. Septic, sick, started draining, and not to offend the viewer, but draining intestinal contents from his incision.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I said, Eddie, I'm happy to try to take you back and give you an ostomy, but like you have cancer everywhere. This is going to take your life. And I would like just to say as an adjunct that he was he was very upset, of course, and distraught by this because we always think we have more time.
Right.
We always think, well, I'm going to get to this and that. But he realized that his time was very short. But one of the most beautiful things that came out of this, and I don't mean to steal his thunder, and he'd tell you if he was here, but he had been estranged from his wife. And he's like, you know what? I want to make it right with my wife.
Wow.
And he had to come back to the hospital, and they got married in the hospital again because he wanted to make sure that she was taken care of. It's just a side note. So I've been praying with Eddie, and he'd been praying with me, and he had people coming up from his church, and they were praying with him. And I just said, yeah, man, I'm so sorry. And we need to get you home with hospice because I expect you to die within 48 to 72 hours. So he did go home with hospice. And I called him about 2 days in. He was in a lot of pain. He was getting pain meds at home and just expected him to succumb to this. And then I didn't hear anything back from him. And I just kind of had assumed that he had passed and the family was in the stages of mourning and grieving. I was wrong. 2 months later.
What?
2 months later, I get a call from the oncologist. And he says,
oh my gosh.
Do you really remember Eddie? And I said, yeah. He's standing here in front of me.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, wait, there's got to be like something's wrong. Like, you mean Eddie? And he goes, yeah. He's here. I said, send him up to my office right now. I got to see him. So
that's amazing.
Eddie comes running up to my office. He's put on 20 pounds.
What?
I'm like, Eddie, how are you alive, my friend?
Yeah.
And he says, power of prayer, man.
There's no reason for it.
I said, dude, you had 100% mortality rate.
Yeah.
And so we got another CAT scan on him. His bowel is still in half. Like, it blows my mind. I wish I could show the CAT scan up here. It's like the craziest CAT scan because you can see the staple lines completely disrupted. He's got this big inflammatory mass where when he eats, it comes out of his intestine. It finds the other end.
No way.
I know. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see the CAT scan myself.
I have never heard such a story.
I never heard. It's crazy. If
I didn't know you, I would say you were totally making it. You're like,
I know.
Wait, are you catfishing me or like messing with me?
Not only that, this guy was not on any antibiotics. He had feculent drainage coming from his midline, complete disruption of everything. And now he's eating, he's gained weight. He recovered completely on his own on a morphine.
That is amazing. Amazing.
And the point I always say is that he knows he still has cancer. He knows his time is still short, but God has given him and granted him a stay on his departure from this earth, and he is using it to the fullest of his potential.
You know, I love that story. I think there is nothing that makes us appreciate our time here more than facing mortality, whether it's the mortality of a loved one or in Eddie's case, his own mortality. It gives us a fresh eye for being grateful for every day and everything that we have. Absolutely. And just seeing him is such an encouragement because he really does believe in Christ and the power of prayer. And I'm looking at him and, you know, I felt God was telling me through that. And I'm always learning, you know what I mean? We're never done learning. As a doctor and even as a student of the Bible and of Jesus, I'm never done learning. And I heard God saying, maybe I'm too small for you, Brandon. Maybe you have me too small. Like, don't the idea of me in a box. Yeah. Right. Like, don't limit me. Don't doubt what I can do. And I'm like, I hear you. I'm sorry. Like, you know, and I'm guilty of that. I have to repent of that. But it's like, God, yeah, you are amazing. Like, how could you help this guy heal so that he can go and love other people to bring restoration to him and his marriage and his wife and his community? In all fairness, I don't think you're making God that small. I think you were acting like I'm a surgeon with your science mind, and we know the papers and the odds and all of that stuff. Like, I think we're just like, crazy. We don't think that God can go beyond that sometimes, but you and I have both seen things are inexplicable over and over again. So that's so cool. It is amazing. So, I mean, stories like that, it's cool to be involved in medicine, to bring
my faith where I can, and to meet people where they're at and to love them. And some people, like I say, they just don't want to engage, and that's fine. I understand you have the freedom to do that, and I'm not here to harm you through religion.
Right.
That's not my goal. My goal is to love you.
Your hand
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
where are people going to find you if they need a good general surgeon
Yes,
with a loving heart?
I appreciate that. Well, I'm part of Alamo City Surgeons, and so yes, it's they're on the north side of San Antonio. So I have offices in Stone Oak Methodist and also at Northeast Methodist, and so happy to see people, help people, offer second opinions, and I would say that a lot of people we see don't need surgery, and that's great.
Yeah.
It's just opportunity again to love people, help people, and I'm going to do the right thing by you, whether I operate on you or not.
Yeah. Well,
So
I know that just from knowing you personally, and I so appreciate that about you, and now our listeners do. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this was a really important, challenging conversation today, and I really appreciate you coming and being on the show and talking with us.
always a pleasure. Hope to come back sometime. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
We'll have more
fun.
stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that's all we got for you today, guys. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, because that's how we grow our audience and get to bring more great conversations on. And until next week, take care, and I'll see you then. Bye.